Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much for being here, Josh. We have Joshua Harris from Lubbock, Texas. He is a group piano teacher. He teaches in a magnet school, right? It's a magnet school. Is it charter?
The
Magnet
magnet.
school that teaches 6th through 12th graders, all girls. And he has like 100, 200 students and gets to teach lots of groups. And he's been doing it for years. So he's taught hundreds and hundreds of students this way, and he's had amazing success. So he's here today to kind of show us what he does, and hopefully we'll all be able to get some insight and see how we can use what he has learned over these years in our own teaching. So thank you, Josh.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. So, like you were saying, I'm Josh Harris. I teach at, it's a long name, it's the Talkington School for Young Women Leaders. And so it's an all-girl college preparatory magnet school in Lubbock, Texas. And so we have great students. So piano is not a required class. We have about 500 students total at the school, not with just piano. So for piano, I have between 120 and 140 students, depending on the year. Teach 7 class periods a day. And those students that take piano have piano class with me 5 days a week. So every school day. So I joke, if I really mean it, that I have the best job in the world. I always say that at the beginning of each of our recitals. And so I've done lots of different presentations on this and various other things. And I've tried to doing it formally where it's like I just talk the whole time and show stuff. And I've done it kind of informally where if you want to ask a question as I'm going along, you can do that. And so I've found that I really like doing kind of more informal kind of a setting. So if I'm going through something and you have a question, when I'm sharing my screen, I don't think I'll be able to see it in the comments. So please feel free to just unmute and speak up. If you have a question, I'll try to address it. If it's something I'm going to be addressing, I'll tell you that, and I'll go back to it. But if it's something I wasn't planning on addressing, then I'll get to it. So I'm the teacher at Talkington, but I'm also the district academic leader for piano in Lubbock ISD, which basically means that I train all the other piano teachers. I'm kind of the head honcho on all that. So we're using basically the system that I've developed over the last 8 years. So I just finished my 8th year at Talkington. I've taught piano before that, but as far as this school in this kind of environment, this into my 8th year. And so basically the system that I've set up and improved on every year for the last 8 years is what we use for the district. And so it's my job to train them on what we're going to be doing. To get a full training on this system, it really takes a good half a day to a whole day. So I'm going to really try to condense what I can into this presentation. So like I said, if you have any questions as we go along, I'm going to share my screen. If just speak up if you have a question about something I'm showing. So thing about the way I do things is it's difficult to know where to start because everything is so interconnected. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start with kind of what I would show the students at the beginning of the year. And so I have classes up to 22 students in a room because I have 22 keyboards. They typically range no smaller than about 12 in each class, and most classes are between 18 and 22. And so a unique thing about it is that the classes are mixed levels. And so I try to do it so that it is I do it as a self-paced class. And so the students, if they're able to learn more quickly, they're able to progress as fast as they want. If they need a little more time to work on something, they can take that a little bit more time. But because they're all mixed levels, it's a challenge in that I can't just teach from the front of the classroom. I have to have everything, so it's kind of I don't know if y'all have heard of a reversed classroom kind of a setup, but it's basically, reverse classroom would be where the teacher has everything set up so the students do all the studying and learning from new material basically as homework at home, and then they come to do work in the classroom, having already learned the material, and then the teacher answers questions with them, they work on stuff. Mine is, I kind of call it a pseudo reverse classroom, in that everything is set up so that they work on it independently, and I'm there all the time to help them answer questions like that. Uh, but but they don't have to do it at home. It's all still done in the classroom. And so the way I'm able to do that at the beginning of each year, well, before I go into that, so the thing I want you to be able to see as I go through all this is my teaching philosophy revolves around the balance of two things: rigor and support. So, students have to have the correct amount of rigor. Okay, they have to be challenged at the right level, because if they're not challenged enough, they get bored. If they're challenged too hard, they get frustrated and then get bored. And so finding the right level of rigor for each student, not just as the class, but each student has to have that proper level of rigor. And then support, once again, if students don't feel supported, if they don't get what they need as far in the way of support, then they get frustrated or they get bored. They feel like they can't do it. Or if they get too much support, if you're trying to micromanage them, they get frustrated and they don't like that. And so finding that balance, so hopefully you'll be able to see that everything I'm showing you ties into that in some way. It either has to do with finding the proper level of rigor for each student, and or the proper level of support for each student. So,
a question for you. Is it Josh or Joshua?
Josh is fine.
Did you do this before you used Piano Marble as well?
Yes, I did it for about 2 years before Piano Marble. Here, let me stop sharing my screen for a second. We'll talk. So yeah, so a little background as far as that goes. I taught choir for about 5 years. Piano is more my forte, but public school piano teaching jobs are highly unusual. And so I enjoyed choir as well. So I taught choir for about 5 years, and then I got a call from a college friend of mine who's the orchestra director at the school I'm at right now. They said how this program came to be was that the principal at the time had told the choir director and the orchestra director, just tell me what you want to purchase, what we need to do, because it was a brand new school, and we'll purchase it and go. So on a whim, the choir director's like, oh, let's get a class set of pianos, and they're the little dinky 62 no weighted keys keyboards. And so they started doing, between the orchestra and choir director, they started doing some piano classes. I believe they did out of the old Faber Piano Adventures books. And so eventually it just got to where they were having more requests for piano than what they could cover. So neither of them were really piano people. And so the students were quickly passing them as far as their ability levels. And so when they started looking for a piano teacher, that my friend called me up and said, hey, you need to go apply for this job. For about 2 years, and I went to a TMTA meeting, and it's just revolutionized it from there.
So
go ahead.
My question is, and I assume you're actually going to go into this, because I'm asking because I also went from using it. Have you found that you've had to adjust those levels of frustration and boredom because you've started to use Piano
Absolutely,
Marble?
yes.
That's
okay. Basically, it was an overhaul of everything I knew. It in a good way, and and I'm the kind of person that I make life difficult on myself, and that I never just stop when I've got a good thing. I always try to improve it a little bit each year. So at the end of each year, I always go, okay, what can I do better? And so and when I was doing it without Piano Marble, I was trying to do it in a way that it was keeping the students all doing the same thing at the same time. So basically, we'd learn a piece over a week, and then I'd have them all come play it for me by Friday. And looking back, it really was an ineffective way of doing that, because you'd have students that would be done with that piece in a day or 2 days, and then you'd have some students that were not finished with it and not ready to perform it by Friday. And so it's kind of that whole thing. You don't want to just push students along, and you also definitely don't want to hold students back. And trying to do it in a way that, you know, was keeping them on the same piece, same level, presenting from the front of the classroom, it was just not, it was effective for maybe 30-40% of the students that happened to move at that pace. So then I, you know, just kind of developed a whole system around Piano Marvel once I discovered Piano Marvel and how effective it is. So I wanted to share with y'all a video that Joel Shiflett, he came down, and with Piano Marvel, if you're not familiar with who he is, he came down to just kind of get some video and see what we do at Talkington. And so he put together a video, and I wanted to show y'all that video. This is in the way. Oh, sorry, 1 second. The little record screen is in the way of my tabs. Okay, where is it? Okay, so my classroom, we're getting ready to move to a new fine arts building. And so my classroom is completely torn up. And so I wanted y'all to be able to see what my setup looked like before I tore it apart to be able to move to a new classroom. So this is the short video that he put together to kind of give you an overview of what it looks like. As a classroom teacher, when you have 22 students in one classroom, you can't give them the support that they need without some kind of technology tool like Piano Marvel. Piano Marvel provides that constant support. Of the students that I've gotten that had private lessons, 90% of them have preferred this setting. There's all the tools in Piano Marvel. The fact that they get to go at their own pace makes them feel like they're more relaxed with it.
The practice mode helps. If there's a ledger line note that I have no clue what it is, I can search for that note using practice mode. Without Piano Marvel, I just don't think I'd be as far as I am. It keeps me like on my toes. I have 2 weeks to finish a piece. I'll get the piece done in a week. Like, I love this. Piano Marvel kind of made it easy to like figure out how to learn things, if that makes sense. And so it made me not as nervous because I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna learn piano, like what? But Piano Marvel made that like really easy to do. It kind of breaks things up for you in a way that it's easy to digest. That way it's not overwhelming. My last SASTR score was an 8 of 6, but my highest SASTR score is an 845. Thanks.
I joke that it's my teaching assistant. I would highly recommend that anybody in a classroom setting, if you have a piano program, find a way to use Piano Marvel. So my wife jokes that I sound like a Piano Marvel like salesman, but it's really because I really believe in what it does, and it's really revolutionized everything that I do. And it's kind of cool. So just give you a little perspective, that student that you heard on there that said she got an 8 something on the SASTR, she actually, shortly after that, we focused on sight reading for a while. That's actually how we won the boot camp challenge. She ended up getting like 1124 or something. And she had never played piano before 6th grade. So she is started in 6th grade. She was a junior this last year, and she was up to 1124 with her SASTR. So
wow,
yeah, it's pretty cool. So let me just kind of jump into this. So
I have a question with that.
Yes.
Does she practice more than at the school, or is that just purely her practicing at school?
Both. So she was pretty motivated and practiced outside of school as well. It's kind of funny because her story about why she really latched onto piano is I had her older sister in piano before we started with piano. And so when Amaya, her name's Maya. So Amaya, when she joined in 6th grade, her reason for wanting to do well in piano was because she wanted to be a sister. And so, so she took that as a challenge and worked really hard at it. And she's like become my fastest, moving student. But as far as the way my class set it works, they don't have to have a piano.
There's some noise in somebody's background. I'm not sure.
Is there in Chantel's?
Oh, maybe. Oh, no worries. Sorry.
That's all right. Where was that? So Oh, so my students don't have to have a piano at home. This is one of the things I really like, because our school focuses on low socioeconomic students. And so it's trying to prepare students who would, most of them are going to be first generation at college, students that would never have the opportunity otherwise. And so I love what I do there, because most of my students would never take piano lessons if it was not provided for them as a school subject. And so the way I set up is that they come in, and basically the class times in a lot of ways are monitored practicing, which, you know, one of the things we as piano teachers always say is if we could just get our students to practice, if they would just practice, then they would improve. Well, this is monitored practicing, so I'm able to observe them every day. It's a set aside time for them every day. And like I said in the video, I've had students that have done private lessons, and students have done it this way. And this is not knocking private lessons by any means, but I would say it's safe to say 90% of the students that I've gotten in my piano classes, if they've had previous private lessons, have preferred doing it in this group setting, because they are doing it an individual thing, but in a group. So there's a kind of a camaraderie that they have doing these things together, playing piano together. It's a set aside specific time that this is all they have to do. You know, when students go try to play at home, and it's the same case with my daughter. I started with her in 3rd grade, and then she started taking piano with me when she got to 6th grade. And she does much better with it in even the classroom setting. So even having the same teacher, me, she's done a lot better in the group setting, because she's very social. She doesn't like to be by herself. And so she never wanted to go to her room to practice the piano all by herself, but she doesn't mind at all going into a classroom full of students, even if they're by no means like sitting and talking to each other the whole time, but they're all doing piano together. And so they just feel this, you know, they're not by themselves. They're not alone in this journey. They also get to see what the more, you know, when I have lower level students with my advanced students, they get to see what is possible coming up if they stick with this for years. And so it's a lot of fun in that way. Okay, so let me get into this.
Do your higher level students sometimes help the other students who are below them?
Yes, I will tell them sometimes. Like if I'm busy with someone else, with one student, I'll, you know, may ask, you know, one of the more advanced students, hey, will you go answer their question real quick or something like that. So yes, they're definitely able to help each other out and be able to get help in that way. I don't know how familiar everybody is with the Google suite of tools, like, you know, Google Forms and Google Docs and, you know, all the Google stuff. But we're a Google district, and so all the students have Chromebooks, and we do a lot of stuff with Google. So I print this piano class reference materials for my beginning students each year, and then they keep it with them as they progress. And so, so what we start out with is I kind of show them, just kind of go over what the various things that I have on here. So one thing that I think sometimes we forget to teach students is how to practice. We just tell them to go practice, but we don't really define for them what that means. And so I saw this is completely stolen from somebody. I honestly don't even remember who I stole it from. But that's what, you know, they say that's what makes a good teacher is you steal everything that's good. And so I tell the students the way that you practice is what you're doing. You're taking something complex, something that you don't know, you don't understand, and then you're breaking it down. Okay, and then I talk to them about what it means to break it down, you know, by left hand, right hand, pitches and rhythms, measures, systems, you know, stuff like that. So you break it down, you slow it down, you keep it slow, and then work on speeding it up. You repeat it, so you do that over and over, and then you start putting it back together. And then as you start putting it back together, if you struggle with, if you're still struggling with it, then you think about, okay, what am I needing to go back to? Do I need to go back and just repeat it some more? Okay, if it's not working to do that, do I need to go back and slow it down, or do I need to go break it down again? So through this kind of cyclical process, they take something complex and bring it over and make it something that's simple, because it's something they did not understand at first, and now they do understand it. And so I teach them what it means to practice. And then the way I'm able to do a self-paced class is that I have things set up in a cycle that the students know what to do at any given time. And so that's a big goal of mine, is that a student should never be sitting not knowing what they're supposed to do. So I set it up so that, you know, you do one thing, you're never finished. You do one thing, and then you go on to the next thing. And so what they do is they start here at the top. They'll watch a video. I'm going to show you a program called Edpuzzle that I use that monitors if they watch a video. Piano Marvel has a lot of great videos that go along with each piece, but I want my students to, you know, to learn my teaching style, as opposed to Aaron Garner's through the Piano Marvel videos, not because he does a poor job, but just because I want them to relate it to me in the way I do things. Otherwise they'll get kind of mixed up and confusing. So I've created my own videos that progress through the Piano Marvel curriculum, levels 1 through 5. So what they do is they go and watch a video. I print out the sheet music for them. So, you know, we can access Piano Marvel obviously on we have a class set of iPads. So obviously they can access it on there, and that's where they use Piano Marvel as far as the whole system. But as far as the method book, I always print out the music for them as well, so they get used to reading it off of sheet music and not just off of an iPad screen. And so as they're watching the video, I may have them writing in rhythm counting, or, you know, a few letter names here and there, finger numbers, stuff like that. So they complete the video work. They practice that piece in Piano Marvel. I tell them that you have to get at least a 97% or better in order to pass that piece. And then after they have passed the piece with a 97% or better, then they go submit that to me on my website, which I'll show you again. Like I said, it's kind of hard to, everything's so interconnected. I have to kind of go back to a lot of things. So they submit that to me. And then on certain days of the week, I do performance assessments. They watch the board and they come up and play for me. And so, so let's kind of talk about performance assessment. So what I've done is I've created a list of pieces that the students have to submit to me when they pass these pieces. So, you know, Piano Marvel has a lot of, like the method book has a lot of little pieces in there that are covering the same topic. But I don't need to hear every little thing that they play. For one thing, I don't have that much time when I have 22 students in a classroom. But also I just don't need to hear from them that often. That would be kind of micromanaging their progress. And so you can see that I've taken certain pieces from each level. So like in 1A, okay, that's where they're just working on, you know, learning rhythms on middle C. They don't have to actually come and like submit a performance assessment to come play for me until they get to C-song eighth notes. Of course, I'm going to be monitoring them and watching to see that they're on track the whole time they're doing that, but they don't have to come up to the piano and play for me. And then 1B, hot cross buns and agent ABC. There are several pieces, you know, the little pieces that are between those, but those are the ones they submit to me. And so as they progress through there, then what they will do is they submit that to me on my website. So I'm going to jump over to that. So I've built a website for my class. That's a whole nother thing that I give presentations on, is building websites, and I'd be happy to do that sometime if y'all are interested. But I've built a website where this is kind of the launching off point for everything that they do. And so when they've passed a piece in Piano Marvel with a 97% or better, they'll come here to the performance assessment tab, and they will come and they will submit to me. So if they're in second period, they'll come to this submission column. Okay, they click on second period, and that's going to take them to the second period performance assessments, where they'll choose their name from the drop-down list. They'll select their performance assessment. So all those pieces that are on that performance assessment list are right here. And so they'll choose which piece. If they're up into advanced levels, which I consider level 6 or above, then they would go here instead of going to the performance. This is the basic performance assessment list that covers levels 1 through 5. And then this covers if they're doing some kind of competition piece, or levels 6 through 9 is what I've gotten students up through at this point. And then at certain points in the year, I also have, I'll call them seasonal performance assessments that they'll do. So when they're doing a Christmas solo or a Christmas duet, things like that, they'll submit that to me. So they submit that to me, and that will put it onto a Google sheet that looks like this. So you can see that it'll come in looking kind of like this. And so you can see that, when I change the names from my students' names to protect the guilty. And so they'll submit their performance assessments to me. And so it comes in like this. And so I sort through those at the beginning of each day to see who I've heard, who I've not, after they play for me. So the kind of the schedule of the week is that on every Monday, we do music literacy, which I'll go into in a minute. Every Thursday, we take the Sasser, and I'll show you kind of how I grade that as well. And then every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, we do performance assessments. So I'll take this list here, I'll put it up on the board. I put the a 1 next to the performance assessments that I need to hear, and then I can sort that like this, and there's my performance assessment list for the day. Then after they have come up, so Chopin can see that he's going to be up next playing Saloon Showdown for me. And then when Chopin comes up, Beethoven knows that he's going to be up next. So after Chopin plays for me, I'm going to put an X there, and then Beethoven knows it's her time to come up. And so that's how I do performance assessments. And then I do a grade. I have a grade form. Okay, so back on my website, I have a grading rubric. Let's see. And so what I'll do is I'll choose their name. I'm just going to use a random name. I'll choose the performance assessment they're playing. And then have it so that then I take the grade for them I try to do everything digitally because I hate piles of paper. And if I have paper, actual physical paper, they end up in piles all over my desk. And so I try to do everything digitally as much as possible. And so then as they come and play for me, then I give them a grade based on this rubric. And so I give them 2 grades with each performance assessment they come and play for me. I give them a music grade, which encompasses pitch, dynamics, rhythm, balance, tempo, continuity, then articulations. And then, let's say they miss a couple of pitches. They, hesitate just a little bit here and there. And they missed some of their staccatos. Then I would go and I go, okay, that's, 2 points for each of those, 2, 4, 6. So there's going to be a 94 for the music grade. And then I give them a technique grade because I want them to understand that those are 2 different things. You can play a piece correctly and have very poor technique, and that's going to be a problem in the long run. Or vice versa, they can play with very good technique, but struggle with the piece. Okay, I want them to understand those are 2 different things they're trying to work on and trying to do both as best they can. So let's say their wrists were dropped just a little bit, and they're bending back that that knuckle, I'll call the nail joint. And so then I give them a grade for that, and then I submit that to them. And so then that puts it into a Google sheet that I can then go and this recording thing is all in my way. And then you can see I go and submit performance grades for them, and then I take those grades and put them in the grade book. So, these are things that don't necessarily apply if you're not in a public school where you're actually taking grades, but that is how I take grades for performance assessments.
So these are for every single selection that they're passing off. They'll go through this graded rubrics.
Yes, well, as often as I can get to them. So I have some classes. So if I have a class of 22 students, then I am not able to keep up with every performance assessment they submit all the time because it's just too much. And so I have them submit them to me because I also take a grade on how many performance assessments they submit to me in a 3-week grading period. And so I'll show you, let me pull that up actually real quick and show you my my grading rubric. My grading rubric, my grading policy. Oh, that was, yeah, that's in my, so my reference materials that I showed you earlier, that's one of the items in my reference materials. Let me scroll down to that. So this is my piano class grading policy. And so we have 9 grading periods. And so in the first 3 weeks, so it's a 9-week grading period, but they get a progress report at every 3 weeks. So if in 3 weeks, I tell them that your goal is to pass at least one performance assessment per week. Now, not everybody is able to do that, but that's their goal, is to be able to try to do one per week. And so if they get 3 or more submitted in 3 weeks, then they get 100%. If they've only submitted 2, then they get 85%. If they've only submitted 1, they get a 70%. If they haven't submitted one performance assessment in 3 weeks, then we have a conversation about what's going on. And we, figure out how I can help them to move things along a little quicker. And then at the 6-week point, this cumulative, so 6 or more, 5 or more, 4 or more. Anyway, so you can see how that works with each grading period. And so that's one, so I call this their progress grade to track their progress. And then I just show you the performance assessment and how to take grades on that. Then I take a grade on sight reading. And so we do this through the SASR. And so let me come back to that in a second, as well as music literacy. I'll show you that in a second as well. And then with my beginners, I started doing a lesson video. So it's kind of funny, the students don't always want to stop and take the time to watch the videos. They just want to jump into piano, which is great. They want to practice. They just want to kind of figure it out themselves. But I always tell them that there's a couple of different aspects to learning piano. There's an aspect of performance. Can you do it? Can you physically play the piece? And then there's the mental behind it, do you understand what it is you're doing? Do you understand what a slur is, what a staccato is? Do you know how to recognize these things? And so if they don't watch the videos, then they may be missing out on some kind of knowledge that they need, even if they could figure the piece out in Piano Marvel by themselves.
I'm doing something very similar to what you're doing. And so this is interesting. I'm doing it for online group classes instead of in-person group classes.
Yeah.
But I'm actually running into the same issue. But I don't have the, they're not in a school getting grades. It's private.
Right.
But like getting them to watch the videos, they're like, well, I can play. Why do I need to watch the videos? Right. And yes. That's an obstacle. I haven't quite figured out how to get them more engaged in the learning aspect of it.
Have you heard of Edpuzzle?
I haven't.
Okay, let me jump into that now then. And now you made a good point that I have something to hold over them as far as grades. I honestly don't like grading, but it's part of something I have to do in a public school. But it does kind of give me something that I kind of gives them some motivation of, well, it's going to affect your grade if you don't watch the videos. But are you having the trouble of not being able to know whether they watched it, or just getting them to watch it?
Just getting them to watch it.
Okay.
They just love being in Piano Marvel and getting it done and doing it. And then they hit a wall, and I try to explain to them, it's because you don't understand the patterns and the things that I've been trying to teach in the lessons.
Yes. Well, let me show you this, and this may or may not help you, but so Edpuzzle, let me share my screen again. I feel funny talking when I'm just looking at my screen, so keep going back and forth. Of course, and then it just covered up. There we go, Edpuzzle. So Edpuzzle is a great platform that you can record videos and you upload them into Edpuzzle. If you have a Google account, then you can just sign in. You can create an account and sign in with Google. If not, you can just sign up with your whatever email. And you can upload your pieces. And so as part of my piano class reference materials, one of the things that I have in here is the class codes that they need for Edpuzzle. And so, so like when they are starting in level 1, I have all of them put in this code right here, and that gives them all the videos for this Edpuzzle level 1. So you can see that they're all, you know, if you're familiar with the Piano Marvel curriculum method books, see B songs through DC songs. So that's the video that covers those pieces, jazz through Agent ABC. And so it actually tells me what I can do as I can look at their account, and it will tell me if they watched that video all the way to completion. I can't show you the student side of it because this is just what the teacher side of it looks like. But basically it looks kind of similar, except there will be 2 columns. There will be, you know, a tab for, you know, unfinished and then a tab for finished. So after they've watched the video all the way through, it'll put it into the completed tab. If they watched it partway through, then it'll show that it was started but not completed. Or if they haven't watched it at all, it shows incomplete. And so I'm able to, so each week I have them come up and show me, are you current on your videos? And if they're not current on watching their videos, even if they've already passed that piece, I say, all right, you got to go back and watch the video because you may be missing something. Even if you passed it and or physically able to do it, you may have missed some kind of knowledge that you're going to need for later. And so I'm that mean person that I make them go back and watch it, even if you've already passed the piece. And I tell them you need to not be doing anything else until you've gone and caught up on your videos. But I tell them the ideal way, you know, to do this is to watch the video first before you start the piece, because then you get the knowledge that you need for starting it. And it's really it's a lot more boring to watch a video that you already passed just to try to see what it was that you missed out on. And so so I would recommend looking into Edpuzzle if that is something that, if you're wanting to be able to track, did you watch this video? So you can tell them, you can get onto them and say, okay, you got to go watch this before you go on. Edpuzzle is a great tool for that. And so, like I said, as part of their class, their reference materials that they have in their binders at the beginning of the year, I have the different levels. And so when they finish level 1 in Piano Marvel, then they go to this finished Piano Marvel level instructions. So I typed out all the instructions. So once again, I have to keep things moving so that I'm not bogged down with helping one student for too long, because you stop for too long with one student and then everything else falls behind. And so I have the instructions typed out on what they're supposed to do when they finish Piano Marvel level. And as part of those instructions is to look in here and go join the next class in Edpuzzle for level 2. And then when they finish level 2, go on level 3. So once again, it kind of keeps it all kind of automated. It's like a well-oiled machine once it gets up and going. So does that kind of help a little bit as far as a thought on something you could use that for?
In regards to my question, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Well, I have an online course that they can't move through to the next lesson until they've watched the video. Oh, gotcha.
What do you do that through?
I do it through LearnDash is the plugin for the course. I do it on a WordPress website.
Okay, that's cool. So yeah, so that's how I use it. You get them, make sure that they watch the videos. But I understand what you're saying there. It's always a struggle with some students. It's like, you got to watch the video, you got to understand what you're doing, not just physically be able to do it. Okay, so that's kind of the little bit of the performance assessment process as far as those grades. Do I have any questions as far as that? And we can always come back.
Is any of this that you could share with us that we
Absolutely
could reference?
Yes. Anything that y'all would like shared, I would be happy to share with you. In fact, something, so when I helped out with that presentation on, what was it, this last Tuesday or Wednesday, something that a lot of people seem interested in is that, as I was showing you, I have performance assessment lists up through level 1 through 5 on the method books. Piano Marvel has a level 6 method book, but I kind of go a different direction because it kind of goes into classical, he starts introducing classical music in, level 6. And so I just created my own level 6 method book, and so let me show you all that real quick. A lot of people were interested in that when I mentioned it the other day. And so let me find it. Here it is. So this is my advanced checklist. So after I found that students, I really like the Piano Marvel method books. I was, when of course, whenever you first start using something, you kind of go, oh, is this going to work? You're a little hesitant about it. And the more I've used the Piano Marvel method book, really, I've found the pacing is great. It really prepares them for all they need to do to jump into classical repertoire. So I have found that students, after they have finished levels 1 through 5 in the method book, then I jump them into this advanced performance assessment checklist.
Have you created books and bundles of this?
Yes, and I can show you all that.
Okay.
And it's actually bundles that are accessible by anybody. Because I'm the district academic leader, this last year we implemented using what I do as the entire district, like this is how we do piano.
That's awesome.
Could you show us in Piano Marvel like what it's called and what it looks like,
yes,
so that we can research it?
Let me show you this, and then you'll see how it ties in with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. And so so you see, so the idea still is that they should be trying to pass 1 performance assessment per week. And so by the time they get through levels 1 through 5 in the method books, ideally, now not every student, but I'd say a good portion of the students are able to then play like Schumann's Wild Horseman and learn it within 1 week. And then so these performance assessments through this list are still with the expectation that we're trying to do 1 of these per week. So you can see as I get into like some bigger pieces, so like the the Clementi Sonatina in C, I can't remember which opus it is. I think 36 number 1. I have that split into, okay, you get 2 performance assessments for it. You get assessment for measures 1 through 15, and then assessment for 1 through 4 the whole piece. And so as the pieces get bigger, I kind of spread them out over more and show them how it's broken up with performance assessments. And so, but yes, I'd be happy to. A lot of people are interested in these lists, so I'd be happy to share these. You can see I've got it all the way up through level 9E. At that point, the students that make it that far, we pretty much didn't just start working on large repertoire, like contest stuff. I put these lists together through from these Keith Snell piano repertoire books. If you're not familiar with them, they go from a primer level all the way through level 10, and they have Baroque and classical set, and they have a Romantic and 20th century set. And so I just kind of did some picking and choosing of what I thought were good priorities of what they needed to learn as they progressed through. And I use these as kind of a guideline for pieces through that. And so these lists are created through that repertoire list. If you're not familiar with those books, they are a great set of books. Okay, so in Piano Marvel, let me pull that up. All the pop-ups. Y'all have been on here a little bit. Okay, so in the library, like I said, on the checklist here, I kept it in the Piano Marvel method book format of 6A, 6B, 6C, because the students really relate to that. I think it's kind of some of that video game thing of they know when they've gone to a new level. And they like to be able to ask each other, what level are you at? And before I did it this way, they were like, oh, I don't really know how to say what level I'm at because I'm just working on this piece and yada yada. And so this makes it kind of fun for them that they can really relate to each other and say, hey, what level are you at? Oh, I'm in 5A. Oh, I'm in 7A. And they kind of have an idea of where that other person is. And so I'd be happy to send this checklist to you so you can see how I have that set up. And then in the library, okay, if you search LISD, then you can see the various lists that I use for different things. And so LISD, I'll go over and what these festival levels are in a minute, but there's the LISD level 7, there should be level 6 here. Yeah, there's LISD level 6.
Can I ask a question here? So I am not familiar with what I'm looking at here. Is Michelle, can you explain?
Yeah, this is the old version of the library.
I think it started to ask me if I wanted to update that, and then it didn't ask me again. So I was thinking it looked kind of funny. Let me see if I can jump it into the new version. Okay. There we are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that old version was, I don't know. I don't even know how many years ago. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. My Chromebook was still showing that one. So LSD search. It's being weird. Waiting.
Is it in your favorites?
I don't know if they are. No, I'm not sure why it's not pulling it up right now. It's being weird. Let me jump into one of my students' accounts. Oh, that's why I'm in the wrong account. Okay, log off there. Sorry, my Chromebook is not cooperating. There we are. Okay, now let's see if it'll work. Okay, I got it. You can tell school's out and I haven't been on this in a little bit. There they are. Okay, this is probably more what you're familiar with.
There, okay.
There we are. So
Awesome.
you can see the level 6. And so I don't think it should show up for y'all as being locked. I think it's because this one is actually a free account because it's just my teacher account.
Yeah, I just checked on mine and I was able to find it and get in. It's not locked.
Okay, good. Yeah, so there's level 6, level 7, 8, and 9. If this is useful for anybody, I also have, I've made a priority for several years, starting about 5 years ago, I think, of taking every student that I have to contest, so some kind of festival. We have a festival called the Greater Southwest Music Festival in Amarillo that has piano solos as one of the events. And so what I do is I'll take them on 2 different days, and we have every student beginning through advanced, 100, all 130, 140, perform for a judge to get some feedback. And I actually found that even students that are kind of shy and say they don't want to do a festival, they get all jazzed up about it when they finish and they get a rating. And it's kind of a nice end of year. I can show that I've actually learned something. And so that is definitely something that I recommend, is finding a way to get your students being evaluated by a judge. It's a good experience for them. And so I have go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, is that in addition to recitals or in place of recitals?
In addition to recitals. Okay. Yeah, here in a second I'll show you my calendar and kind of show you what the overall year looks like. And so when we are getting ready for a festival or a competition of any kind, I have, if they're in levels 1 through 5, I have these lists of pieces they can choose from, because like I was saying, I have students that are of all different levels in the same class, so I have to find ways to give them the same material but scaffolded to where they're at. And so when it comes time to choose pieces for festival, I tell them, okay, go find the list that is according to your level. So if you're in level 2E, you're going to look for this level 2C to 3A list. And then you go and you listen to these pieces and pick one for yourself. They're all pieces that are able to be done at that level. And they pick one and then they start learning that piece. Then I have that all the way, like I said, 1 through 5. And then once they get into level 6, then I let them just choose from a piece because when we go to festivals and stuff, I always tell them we want to do like classical repertoire. We don't want to use method book repertoire. And so once they've gotten to level 6, then they're already working on classical repertoire. And so they just pick a piece from that list. But these, if you wanted to use these, I've curated these lists over several years. They are scaffolded according to what the students know in Piano Marvel. So like, any of these pieces here for level 3B only contains music that they would understand. If they're in level 3B, they would understand everything that's presented to them in that piece. And so, speaking of the calendar, let me kind of show you. There it is. Our calendar for the year in general is, we have our first recital that we have is optional for piano students, because when you try to get 140 students playing, it takes a long time. And so our fall fine arts night is our first thing that they optionally can participate in October. And then the first mandatory recital that everybody has to participate in is the Christmas recital. And so I have on here when I start those. So for my students that are in about level 3B or up, or maybe it's 3E, I have to look at it. I have them work on Christmas duets, because that stemmed from the first year that I was teaching there. I started trying to figure out how I was going to do a recital with 140 students and not have it take 3 hours. And so I thought, oh, duets. So it's a tradition that when they get to a certain level, the students learn a Christmas duet with somebody else in the class. And so I figured out that I need about 5 weeks out from the performance for us to start those pieces. And then beginners do solos, and we start those about 2 weeks out from the performance. And then there's a college here, Wayland Baptist University. That's actually where I graduated from. They have a competition, so students that are high level students can participate in that competition. I like to take my students every year when COVID's not being an issue. I take my students over to Wayland Baptist University so they can see what a music department looks like, and they do a little piano camp for us where they talk about careers in piano, and we do some master classes, stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. And then Great Southwest Music Festival is here towards the end of the year. We do UIL solo and ensemble, and then students that play the hardest level pieces and get a first division rating on that go on and will play in the state solo and ensemble recital. So we have a recital for them. And then this year, instead of doing the Greater Southwest for everybody, we actually put on our own piano festival, which we use those lists that I showed you in Piano Marvel for students, for the repertoire list for that piano festival. So we have 5 schools in LSD that have piano programs. And so we did this for the first time this year. It was really cool. So we did a festival all of ourselves, and then we had the judges rank the students that participated, and then we had a recital based on that festival. So that's a whole nother conversation. I'd be happy to have. But that was a lot of work, but a lot of fun. And then spring recital. So the things that are required for everybody would be the Christmas recital, the piano festival, and the spring recital. So everybody beginning through advanced do those. And then there are other opportunities for different students based on whatever level they're at in piano. Any questions on that?
Just that this seems really awesome.
Oh, good.
I was thinking, I wish I had gone to school here.
I know. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great.
Well, like I said, it's been many years, in a process of many years. But I, as I've said, I'm happy to share any of this, at later points. If there's anything we want to go more into depth, I can talk for hours and hours about what I do here, because I love doing it. Okay, so let me go back to my website and show you music literacy. So like I said, every Monday we do music literacy. Now don't call it music theory, because it's not that we're diving into the theory of it so much as we're diving into making sure, can you read? So there's a lot of theory things that, they may both, and that's one thing I'm trying to figure out the best ways of implementing theory in there as well. But so I call these music literacy. So I have, real quick, I want to see how many of y'all are familiar with musictheory.net. Can you show me?
Oh yeah, that's what I use in my course.
Okay, good. Well, so I might not be showing you too much, but I have musictheory.net exercises set up for every level. And so once again, because I have students of all different levels that are in the same classes, then I have to be able to have them do the same thing, quote unquote, but at their different levels. And so basically, so I have these keyboard letter name exercises. So if they're in level 1E, they're going to come over here and they're going to do all the exercises in level 1E. So they're going to click on that. It's going to pull up this exercise. I give them 1 minute. And the way I grade them on these is I tell them that you need to answer at least 30 questions. Okay, so you go through here, and of course they're, doing this. If they get this number up to 30, and it's at least a 97% in that 1 minute, then that exercise was passed. If they did not get it fast enough, or the percentage or the accuracy was too low, then they have to do it again. And they just keep doing that 1 minute exercise over and over until they're able to practice that enough that they can get at least 97% and at least 30 answered. Because I want them to not only be able to read accurately, but I want them to be able to read quickly, because it drives me crazy when, a student, I go to talk to them about something, and I point at the music and say, okay, what's this note here? And it's like, and they take like forever figuring it out. It's like, well, that's the problem, is you aren't reading the music fast enough.
Question for you, Josh. Yeah. So have you found a way that, like, so when I do these, like, they could do 2 out of 30 and it'll give it 100% if they got them correct. Is there a way that they have to do the 30 in order to pass, kind of thing?
Let's see. So if I were doing this, if they only answered 2, there is a way that you can tell it how many you want it to stop at. I don't know if there's a way to tell you, say you have to get up to this amount, but you can. Do you have them sign it afterward?
I do.
Yeah, so you can have them sign it and then send it to me, and then you can look and see, did they get, yeah, so I see what you're saying. They could answer 2 and it still says 100%, but that's when I tell them, okay, you have to go back and do it again, because that's not a passing score.
Okay.
But once again, I have grades that I hold over them and say, well, you didn't pass that, you don't get a grade for that one. You know, so like if they have 2 exercises and they don't pass one of them, then they only got a 50% for their music literacy grade for the week. But yeah, so I have them, so if anybody's not familiar with it, you can go here to view report. I have them put their last name, first name, and then I also have them put the date, so that they're not just like saving the code and submitting it to me again. So then they can sign that, and it'll, and then what they can do is they can copy that code, and then I have them go onto my website, once again, with the music theory tab or music literacy tab. And then from there, they can, of course, they learn how to navigate all these little things that I'm doing on my website. Then they can go here, they put their name in, they put level they're in, so if they're 1E, and then it's going to ask for those codes they paste in there. And then they submit that to me, and it puts it so that I can go look at those codes on one of my Google Sheets. And I can hover over it, click on it, and then it's gonna pull up, and I can look and see if it was the right name, the right date, and the right exercise. So, so that's what I do for music literacy. You can see that as you go on, there gets to be more and more that they know. So at some point at level 2A, I want them to start recognizing intervals. Then at 2D is when they learn about sharps and flats. So they need to recognize sharps and flats and how to figure out. It's amazing how often students, they see a sharp or a flat and they just randomly guess on a black key, and they don't, think about the sharp goes up and the flat goes down. And then as they get into level 3, but you can see that they all can go and do the same thing, quote unquote, but they're doing it for their level. So if they're in 3E, they do all of the exercises in this column. So then by the time we get to 4, it gets to be quite a few. And then by the time we get to 5, I start narrowing it down a little bit and kind of consolidating some of the exercises. But we do, so that's what we do every Monday. I do it on Mondays because students, if they don't have a piano at home, they didn't practice over the weekend, then a lot of them don't really want to come play for me and do a performance assessment on Monday. And so it doesn't take most of them the entire class period. It usually takes 20 minutes to get all of them passed. If it takes them more than 20 minutes, then they take the whole class period for it, and that's what they need to do. I used to think I don't have time for them to be spending that much time on music literacy. And then I started realizing, no, I don't have time for them to not spend that much time on music literacy if they need it, because they're not going to practice well if they can't read. And so I make a priority of that each week. So they submit that to me, and any questions on that? I know I'm getting to my hour point. Tell me when I need to shut up, because I like talking about this stuff.
Just a thought. Go ahead, Michelle.
No, you go ahead, Cami. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I just had a thought. So my son recently he got an award for coding, like computer coding, and he's like a third grader, so he's young. Okay. And they have this. He's in a charter school that focuses on technology and the arts. So they have this award ceremony, and it was like a rock concert. Like they would present the winners of the different categories, and everybody was, whoa, they're going crazy. And I was thinking, the setup you have here is really great, I think, for creating that sense of together we're accomplishing something great. Yes. So like along with this, I was going to say, Michelle, with the Music Marvel Academies that you guys are thinking of moving forward, will they follow somewhat of a similar pattern that Josh is doing here?
I think so. It'll be different because, again, it won't be affiliated with school. Therefore, there won't be grades and things like that. But yes, definitely we want to have, like, that's kind of the whole point of having group lessons, is that camaraderie, being able to feel like we're doing this together. Just like you said, Josh, with your daughter, she learned better. Same teacher, learned better in a group. That was my experience growing up as well. My dad he's a great teacher. I did not learn well from him until I was in a group setting. And then it was great. So not everyone's like that, but a lot of people prefer piano to be a group experience and to have that camaraderie as they're learning. So yeah.
Well, Joel and I, when he came the other day to interview me and my students, we were discussing how, a lot of piano teaching is a lot of times done the same way it was done 100 years ago. And it's not going with the times. And students understand this technology. The gamification that Piano Marvel has, in which they get a grade, when they play something, they can clearly see, did I do it right or did I not do it right? Now, of course, there are plenty of things that Piano Marvel doesn't assess that, Piano Marvel by itself doesn't teach everything they need. It's still a necessity for a teacher, because there's no way for a computer program to teach technique, or it doesn't, my students have said before, well, why doesn't Piano Marvel, as you've all noticed, if you play a whole note on beat 1 and then let go of it on beat 2, it will still show it green. So the students are well, why can't they just have it so that it shows the length? I tell them, well, a computer has to have very specific criteria for it to assess. And how long is a whole note? Is a whole note technically 4 beats, or is it in actual practice 3 3/4 of a beat, or 3 7/8 of a beat? And so a computer can't understand that. And so that's why it's still necessary to have a teacher that teaches technique and teaches, okay, that may have said it was right in Piano Marvel, but you didn't hold it out for 4 beats, and so it's not actually right. You're close, but not actually completely right. And so, yeah.
And I find it interesting that, so you work in this, I assume magnet school has to do something with being a low income. I'm not sure if they're associated or what a magnet school is, but.
A magnet school is basically just students apply to go there. So we're part of the LISD public school system, but we don't have a feeder school that comes into our school. You have to apply from anywhere else to go to Talkington. So that's what makes it a magnet school.
Well, so what I was thinking, because you were talking about, so it's all girls, 6th through 12th grade, and it's something to do with becoming leaders, women leaders.
Right.
I'm sorry if I can't remember all the exact
That's
details,
okay.
but
Yep. School for young women.
but I was going to say something really fantastic about what you're doing is your belief in these these students that are learning piano, like the relationship they have with you. For me, that is actually one of the most powerful parts of being a teacher, is the students feeling from you as their teacher of what they can be, what they can accomplish, who they are, why they're valuable, and what they can do. Right. So I really find the school itself just kind of inspirational, and the fact that you've taken that and run with that and made it, the whole district is like, yeah, he's got something, we're gonna go with this kind of thing.
When it's kind of funny, that was actually one of my concerns when I started using Piano Marvel, is I was going, okay, am I removing myself too much from the equation? My students are going to start connecting with Piano Marvel instead of connecting with me. And if anybody kind of were to have that concern, that is not the case. I'm still clearly their teacher. They still connect with me. I've just given them a tool that helps them out a lot, and so once again, going back to that rigor and support, this gives them the support they need. They can self-assess, they can work through at their own pace, and so that keeps the rigor of what they're doing ideal, because if they are able to learn faster, they move faster, and so it's keeping that rigor where it needs to be. If they don't learn quite as fast, then the rigor is lower because they are moving at their own pace. They're taking the time that they need to. And so I talk to them about how it's more important for them to master the material than to be fast. But also I tell them that, self-paced doesn't mean you just lollygag around and, take all the time you want in the world. And so if I tell them, if you are capable of passing 3 performance assessments in a week, then 1 performance assessment is not adequate, because that's not your personal best. You should be doing your personal best. If your personal best is a performance assessment 1 week, or this particular performance assessment is harder for you, and so you are getting 1 performance assessment in 2 weeks, as long as you're doing your personal best, then that's what I expect of you.
I've really run into some difficulties with this. I'm glad you addressed it, because I've had to adjust a lot of my time frames for people, because, for example, I've had students, I used to give them 2 months to learn a recital piece. And before Piano Marvel, I gave them 3 to 5 or 6 months to learn a recital piece. And then I narrowed it down to 2, because I thought, well, they're going to be able to learn it faster. They learned 4 or 5 each in that time frame. And so I'm like, I've got to narrow it way down, because that's a long recital, with all of those pieces. So I thought it was interesting that you did some experimentation to find out this is about how much time they need to prepare for this performance or this competition or whatever it is.
And I'm trying to think who said it. Is some composer that said, all that is needed to do great things is a plan and not quite enough time. And so I encourage them. I tell them that it's like, okay, I'm giving you the amount of time that you should be able to get this done, but you're going to have to book it. We don't want to waste time, because they'll take as long as you give them to learn something. If you give them a year to learn it, they will take a year to learn it.
I had a student on the other end. He had said, I don't want to get so frustrated that I'll punch the wall, is what he said. He actually punched the wall. Like, he chose a piece that was so challenging. And I've always been the kind of teacher that like, hey, if you want to do it, because I'm that way. I'm like, don't restrict me. Like, if I want to do something hard, let me do it. So I did that for this student, said, yeah, if you want to do it, I can help you learn it. We'll get through it. He actually punched the wall and had to fix it, repaint it, teach a lesson to his kids about how to handle frustration. But essentially that shows the 2 ends, like not giving them too much time to learn it, or giving them something that's so hard that it brings their frustration level too high. And when I learned he actually did, I was like, oh my gosh, so sorry, like, let's go easier.
And once again, it comes back to that level of rigor. So finding that balance, and it's a hard thing to balance that for every single student. And so like my system was set up. That's not to say I've never gave something that was too hard, and but it's a learning experience. Whether if you choose something that's too hard or if you choose something that's too easy. Sometimes I'll have a student pick a piece and they have it learned by the end of the class period, and it's like, okay, we need to put you on something harder for the recital. We don't need you playing something that you learned in one day. But so that kind of let me think about when I do like UIL solo and ensemble competition. There are repertoire lists that we have to choose from for the solo and ensemble competition, and if they there's grade 3, grade 2, and grade 1. And if you play a grade 1 piece and get a first division rating on it, then you go on to state solo and ensemble competition. So that's one of those things that students always kind of aspire to. And so that I've gotten scheduled out to. So when they're doing a piece, so like I've had several people do the WC Dr. Butters, I pronounce them. And so what I'll do is for those pieces, I give them 8 weeks to learn them because they're large pieces. But we take the piece and we divide it into 8 performance assessments. And so there's still that same language, that still same concept as you're still trying to get a performance assessment or more per week. And that helps them to try to stay on track with, I'm not trying to, I always tell them, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It helps them to break that into those bites.
Yeah, something I've been doing recently, and then I want to make sure to open it up to everybody because I've been asking so many questions that I don't want to override the other questions, is I've been saying, show me what you can do in 5 minutes, and then multiply that times a period of time to gauge, because then it gives them a sort of sense about what they should be able to accomplish in a given time frame. Yeah. Does anybody else have? Oh, go ahead.
I tell my students so that they have to get up to a level 7 before they can attempt a grade 1 piece, because that's the level at which they can successfully do some of the easier grade 1 pieces. So y'all know with any repertoire list, it may all be a grade 1, but they're not all equal. Some of them are easier than others. And so when they've gotten up to my level 7 performance assessment list, then that has them prepared to try a grade 1 piece.
A what piece?
A grade 1 as the hardest level of the solo and ensemble competition.
Oh, okay. I was thinking level 1 in Piano Marvel. I'm like,
no. So my level 7. Yeah, I know some things go up, and some things go down. So so a grade 1 piece in the UIL solo and ensemble competition. And so I do restrict, if you are not up to this level, you are not going to be successful with one of these pieces, most likely. And I told them this has been my experience. Okay. And if it's if it's a particularly motivated student that I'm like, okay, they could do it, then I'll tell them, I don't normally do this. And you need to have the understanding that you're probably going to have to put in extra practice because this is harder than what I would normally assign to somebody, but I'll let you give it a try if you're willing to put in the effort. But that has to be kind of a one-on-one basis.
Does anybody have any questions for Josh? Have I just been the one that has all the questions?
No, I mean, you've been asking a lot of my questions, so.
Oh, good. I've just been zoning in everybody's.
I'm trying to look at the chat to see if there's anything.
Some people were having difficulty accessing your LISD on Piano Marvel, and we were going to jump in and try to help them with that.
Yeah, you might check that. If you may have seen that on my account that it was locked because my teacher account is a free account. And so if you're trying to log in with your teacher account, a free account doesn't have access to everything in the library, as you know, and so that might be why is my teacher account.
Yeah, Anne said that it wasn't coming up at all, like not even that it was locked. So I'll help her with that.
Okay.
I even went online to the Piano Marvel library, and it doesn't come up there either.
Oh, Lawrence is saying the same thing.
Yeah, I didn't find it either.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll figure that out. We'll help you guys figure it out. But Josh, they're also asking for the actual physical list. Could you maybe send me an email with all that stuff, and then I can get it to everybody?
Yeah. Can I just send it to you, and you can send it out.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
The best way to share that with everybody. So yes, I'll just make a PDF of that and send it to you, and then anybody that's interested, you're welcome. Let me put my email in the chat here real quick also, so if anybody wants to save that, I'm always happy to talk about stuff. Sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. So there's my email address. If you want to save that, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to ask. Yes, I see a hand.
You said you set up websites also. Would you in the future be willing for Fee to set up a website like yours for one of us?
I absolutely could do that. Let's see. How familiar? Raise your hand if you're familiar with Google's Google suite of stuff, like Google Sites, Google Slides. Okay. If you haven't used Google Sites, that's actually a really good website builder for that. Michelle, do I have time to show anyone like that?
Yeah, I mean, because we've gone, we always go a little bit over, and any of you who need to get off can totally get off. But those of you that want to stay and watch this can. So yeah, that's fine.
I actually at the Texas Music Educators Association, TMEA, conference this year, I presented a session on build your own website, is what I called it. And where I went over how to build a website. I would be happy to do a presentation like that sometime, if you would like.
That might actually, maybe in a couple of weeks, that could be a whole topic for one of these, because that might be something that needs a little more dedication.
Yeah, I could kind of show you, like, scratch the surface, but it's not going to really show you that much. So yeah, I'll probably do that, make a plan for that, and I'd be happy, because that was an hour-long presentation itself. It's really easy to do. It's not hard, but it just takes the playing around with it and kind of showing you how to play with it.
This would also be interesting to discuss a little bit the interoperability, because I'm always switching between what Kami is doing. I have a learning management system called Moodle, which works very similar to what is Kami using on WordPress.
Okay.
But I realized there is also a high demand of being able to really keep things outside of systems, of any system, like what Google Slides is offering, or Excel sheets, or whatever, because you can really share it with anybody. They do not need to be logged in. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot, when somebody asks to do a website, because I do a lot of websites too, and the question is not so much the technology, the question is very much to understand what we actually need. And that could be also interesting if, who asked the question, Lalit? If she could give like some more insight, what she actually wants to achieve. I already discussed with Michelle, I think twice at least, if there is a possibility to integrate through an API, like through a little link or a little tool, the scores from Piano Marvel into such a system, which is really great. But that could be probably even with some script, and it could be integrated with Google Sheets or something like that, which will be more viable for many people who do not want to set up such a complicated system, because my system is almost automized, which has a lot of advantages, but it requires more knowledge, more maintenance. So that is always a question, because I worked a lot on downgrading as well, like low tech, because not everybody needs a lot of technology, and sometimes a simple blog is more efficient if it's maintained, if it's live, and that is something I would like to contribute to, or we could discuss all together. Perhaps I can set up a kind of inquiry or something on these points, and we can share it, what everybody needs, because that will be very different, I think.
Absolutely, yes. And so like the reason I was asking about Google Sites is that, I said I'm the district academic leader for piano for Lubbock ISD. And so I created a Google site that I then duplicate. So I'll make a copy of it, and then I share it with when we have a new teacher come in for one of our schools. So I share it with them, so they just have to kind of finish setting it up, as opposed to building it from scratch. But once again, that's something I could get into in a session. But yes, knowing what you want out of a website is very important. I don't know if anybody, in public school system classes, Google Classroom, a lot of people like. I hate it. I do not like Google Classroom.
Well,
public school system, one of the problems I have, because I'm working with public teachers and European countries, yeah, the US as well, I know their system, we have a grading system, like a national standard. Mm-hmm. And really, this is not working very nicely with Google Classroom. That is one of the biggest issues, how to assess competences, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing I could show is, as I do, this would go in with the website kind of session, but I do student digital portfolios through Google Sites, and so I record all of their recitals and stuff like that, and so then they have a digital portfolio of a Google site that they go and we update twice a year, and so it kind of keeps up with that, showing what they can do and putting it all in kind of a little you can look at and see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I found that so I have found that using Google Docs, because of their interactive nature, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Has been a great thing for me to help the students set up their personal goals, because mm-hmm. you can interact with them directly.
Yeah.
And they update their goals, but you can come in and, add to it or have comments or whatever mm-hmm. you need to do. So that's been kind of a nice addition to what I'm doing. And when you said it's really simple, I thought that would be good, because the one I've done is very, very complicated and it's not easily replicatable. And especially for people who are in person or just starting out, having something that's like, I could do that.
Yeah.
Is really nice, because me and my husband, we took an entire year putting ours together, and it was involved. WordPress is not intuitive.
Yeah, I've heard WordPress. Yeah, the website I've been showing y'all is Weebly.com, which I actually like better than Google Sites, but it's not shareable. Like you can't duplicate it and share it, which is why for the district purposes, I've switched it over and made one that looks pretty much like what I showed you on mine on Google Sites, because then it can be made, you can copy it and share it, and all you need is to have a Google account. And so
awesome.
That's a, like I said, whole nother conversation for another time, but I'd be happy to have that conversation.
Well, I don't know if we've lost Michelle here, because her screen just went to a picture right there. But I was going to say, does anybody else have any questions for Josh? Lalit has one.
Josh, it's not so much a question, but I just personally like to thank you for all the women and girls in Texas who need all the help that they can get at this difficult time for women in Texas, that you are giving them leadership and self-confidence, and you're doing something that is really important. And so we thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love doing what I do. Like I said, I always say I have the best job in the world. But it's so fun to see them kind of grow, and because I have them 6th through 12th grade, I get 7 years, students that stick with me for all 7 years. It's interesting when they graduate. It's happy for you, but it's really kind of sad, because you are losing this person that you worked with for 7 years, and so it's
You're not losing them.
Yeah. It's funny. I did a Facebook post the other day after graduation that it's just like I feel very conflicted when we have graduation, because you go from seeing them every day, every school day for 7 years, to you probably see them at some point in the future, but who knows? Just send them out into the world, and so it's a great job, but that's one of the challenges there.
Well, and I'm curious to see who is it that Lori Dunn, is she the one who is often in the studio going for that first, that high spot in the challenges?
Yeah.
I have a feeling you and her are going to have the greatest competitions with one another, because you're similar sizes. Is that right?
Yeah.
Ish?
Are we?
I think so. Yeah. Very different, because hers is a private studio with all ages, mostly younger students. But yeah, like similar amounts of students. Well, she probably has about 100. But yeah,
so now when we
cool.
see that
kind of
going
duke it out.
we're gonna know who Josh is and Lori and
that's right.
What's going on there.
And it's kind of funny. It's always when it kind of lines up with what my pacing of the class, matches with. So like the boot camp thing worked out as far as lining up with. I was working on getting them ready for a district-wide sight reading test. So it's like, and I think it worked really well for it. So that happened to work out with that timing. It was kind of funny when they did my normal thing is teaching classical music because that's how I was trained. But when it got to the classical challenge in May, that was actually the 1 month when I was letting them, we work on jazz, rag, blues music in May for our recital. And so it was the 1 month we weren't doing classical music. But yeah, and of course the Christmas stuff that they enjoy doing the Christmas challenge. I appreciate Piano Marble doing that because that's a fun thing for them to participate in.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Josh. Does anybody else have any other questions before we get off? We've already gone half an hour over, but this has been really great. I've learned a lot. I would love to replicate what you're doing in every school in the country. That would be amazing. So
that's what I'm trying to do. In fact, I meant to say something earlier. Is that the teachers? We had a couple of new teachers that had. One of the challenges when trying to get piano programs into public schools is a lot of times it's not big enough, or the school doesn't prioritize it enough yet to have a specific piano teacher. And so they have like a choir teacher teaching piano and choir.
Yeah.
And so I had two teachers that were in that boat this last year that I trained them on my whole system, and they didn't have any more piano training than just the basic passing a piano proficiency test in college. And they were able to, using this system, with all the videos that I've created and the whole setup that I've been showing you, they were able to have a successful year with their students, even though they weren't piano people necessarily themselves.
Yeah.
So that's not saying that it's not going to work better with a piano teacher, someone who has that training, but it can still work even with the most basic of training.
Yeah, that's cool.
Just a quick question, Lawrence, is your setup a group teaching setup?
No.
Okay. That's what I was wondering. Because you're in Canada, right?
Yes.
I felt like when I was reaching out to all the teachers, you had like worked for a school or some kind of something as far as the contact information was concerned. And that's why I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I think who all here does some kind of group lessons? Yeah, okay. I do in a sense, not really with my own private students, but yeah, so Tabea, not really. You do more one-on-one online. And then Lawrence, are you still teaching a lot of online, or have you gone back to in person, Lawrence?
It's both now. A lot more in person. What I'd like to try to do when I have two siblings and I'm going to their house, I think I could bring my own keyboard.
Yeah, have like a group with the siblings. Yeah, that could be really good.
So I make sure that all my group students also have private time with me, in addition to the group lesson. That's real important to me.
I've often wondered, because I have once again, different dynamic because it's a piano class in a school, and so they all come in for a certain amount of time. I've often kind of contemplated what I would do, how I would do it, because I would definitely use Piano Marvel if I was doing it privately, but I've thought about, I'm curious how people would do group lessons outside of that, school setting. Do you have them all?
I think the key is that there's tons of different ways to do it, and I think everybody kind of does it in a different way. I think a lot of them do it very similarly to the way you do, just in kind of smaller groups, more like 4 to 8 students at a time. But I think very similar, where they have independent work time and you pull aside a student to help them or work on musicality or whatever you're going to be working on. But yeah, just having that independent study time while you can have, whatever time you need with individuals. A lot of teachers do it that way. I know Anne does. You do mostly twos, right?
No, I have groups of 4.
Groups of 4. Okay.
My online group class is 8 at a time.
Oh, wow.
But then each of
But
them also get a private time with me.
do they
Gotcha.
get? Do
So
they
that's
like
a good
watch
combination.
your video or meet with you like once a week or like 5 times a week? How does that work? I'm curious.
Are you asking me?
Just anybody who does does private based group lessons.
So what I do with my kids in one particular curriculum is I have a weekly 30 to 40 minute online, but it's live online, so it's highly interactive so that I get questions back and forth from them and I can keep them, they don't just have to watch a video. It's very, very interactive.
Yeah.
It's mainly for me to teach and for them to, just do whatever they need to do, and I can watch them doing it because we're quite active in our classes. And then once a week, I meet with each of them. I tell them 15 minutes. Sometimes we go way over. That's all. This is all online.
Okay.
Yeah, and I teach mine. It's mostly adults, and I teach them in online group. And most of the teaching is through the course. But then I have interactions with them through, we use something called Buddy Boss, which is kind of like a Facebook, but a private Facebook for your website. So I do a lot of messaging with them through that, as well as using the Google Docs for their goals, as well as using Marco Polo for them to share performances and me to share back, any input or, how they're doing. So we only meet once a week in person, but these other interactions are happening throughout the week, but once a week in person, and it's up to 10 people in the group. And because it's an adult focused group, the group is actually more focused on, did you meet your goals? Share us your wins and your successes. What problems or struggles have you run into? And then we address those in the group. It's not just structured like you would with younger learners sometimes. It's more like, tell us what difficulties run into and we'll help you.
More like just like an accountability system.
Yeah. And a community. Usually what happens is they inspire each other. So it's mostly to say, you had this problem, how did you overcome it? Kind of what we're doing here, but for the student. And so that's what I have found is it's primarily the accountability as well as inspiration for one another.
The group I was describing just now, those kids are 7, 8. And so we can't get, we have to do it a way that works for them.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I have also very different experience with group lessons because I only have experience in language teaching. And I did that in groups of 4 and 5 maximum because of the time each one can really speak. I mean, in an hour, that was a weekly hour. So there is like a time limit. And the motivation to do that in a group is that the interaction you have among the people and that you learn from the mistakes of others. So actually, really, you require the others to learn something. That was the reason. But with COVID, I switched completely to online, and I will not teach anymore offline. I decided to do that for several reasons. And before I actually only taught to adults and young teenagers. And now I have still some adults one-to-one, also for piano, and then very small children, 8 and 12, because we moved the whole setting into Minecraft and virtual environments like Mozilla Hub. And older people still have some limits in approaching these environments. So we are working on that. And since I see that my target is more this age, we are working for this summer right now to do that with Piano Marvel. So we will let you know how that works.
And Josh, was something I really loved that you talked about is how some of the more advanced students help some of the other students. And that's something like I'm trying to incorporate more into what I'm doing because I find it so valuable that they recognize this almost responsibility to one another and have a sense of like, I have something to contribute. It's not all receiving, I'm giving as well. I really like that.
Well, it makes me think about my wife has a black belt in Taekwondo, and so when they in Taekwondo, and I took lessons in Taekwondo for a while until I, broke my back. No, I didn't break it, but I had a herniated disc. I had to stop. But But something that they do that's interesting is that they have students that will, when you get to be a black belt in Taekwondo, you are part of the teaching group.
Okay. There you go.
So, yeah.
Same concept.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like you are surrounded by empowered women.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
I have 2 daughters, a wife, and I teach at an all-girls school. So I say that's just where God.
Well, that's cool. This group, if you start coming more often, you'll just be surrounded by more women because we're like 95% women.
We actually have more men here today than we normally do.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Usually there's like
coming.
1.
I'm gonna be trying to join more often. It's one of those things I can't join in the school year because it's right in the middle of
right.
summer. I'll try to jump in more.
Awesome. Cool. And I think it is a little smaller during the summer because, lots of teachers are on break and stuff like that. So it's a little smaller, but it's cool. We get to know each other and help each other out. So thank you so much for presenting for us and having this discussion with us. I think it was really valuable for me, and I hope everybody else too. So
thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Josh.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.